So this is a photo of me and my pop. And unfortunately, he passed away in 2008. And while that may be a depressing way to start a talk like this, there's one vivid memory I have of my pop when I was about 7 years old. Me and my sister were being annoying to each other as young brother and sisters tend to do. And we're in the car, and obviously being in a frustrated state, or at least somewhat a frustrated state, he turned to both of us and said, "Can't you two both pay attention to something else? Look in your environment around you. Look at the car drive past on the road. Look at the nest that the birds are making in the tree over there." And there actually was a bird's nest in the tree. And obviously, as a 7-year-old boy, I was obviously thinking he was a little silly at the time. But this is a philosophy that I try and live by today. And I think that's why this memory is really stuck for me. So who here has ever been driving in a car? Maybe you're a little bit too young to drive, but maybe you've been in a passenger in the car. And you get to a certain point in your trip and you go, "How on earth did I get here?" Hands up. Anyone? Yep. Okay. What about when you're sitting at bed at night and you just can't stop thinking about things and you get to a certain point in your thoughts and you go, "How did I start thinking about this?" Just about everyone. What about when you're grocery shopping and you completely forget what you're going in there to buy? So what this tells me is that a lot of our behavior is fairly automatic, and I think you will agree to a certain extent. The problem is the tasks that we complete become so boring and monotonous that our minds come up with ways to keep them interesting. And unfortunately for us, this is usually in the form of induced thought. Our minds induce thought on things to keep them interesting, and this ultimately takes us away from the moment. Whoop. So I vividly remember my teenage years, and it wasn't that long ago, so I probably should. And I remember how hard it was to be a teenager. I definitely suffered psychologically as a teenager. All those hormones that seemingly change your behavior, all those thoughts that pop into your head like, "I'm not good enough, I hope this person really likes me." Or maybe you're thinking about a thought from the past, a memory, over and over again. Who would get rid of all these things if they could? And who can empathize? Put up your other hand. Yeah, there's quite a few of you. So obviously we want to get rid of these things. The bad news is that if you continue to do things the way you are and you do not learn a new skill, these things will continue to occur and this suffering will continue to occur. But the good news is there's always new skills to learn. One of these is mindfulness. Who's heard of mindfulness before? Cool. So mindfulness is a mental skill that is cultivated through attentive, open, detached observation and is supported by diligence and concentration from moment to moment. And that might seem a bit wordy, but I'm going to break this down, and there are two key phrases which I've highlighted up here: detached and moment to moment. And I'm about to talk about those now. But before I do, I'm going to introduce two of my friends, hypothetical friends. Maybe they're the only friends I have. Jane and Dane. So Jane over here, she what we call rumination. So that example I gave before about why the teenage years are so hard, thinking about a thought from your memory over and over again. Maybe it's a conversation that you had with your teacher. Maybe it's thinking about something else like how you failed an exam. Then over here we have Dane, and Dane has anxiety, what we call anxiety. I like to call them the what ifs. What if she doesn't like me? What if I fail the exam? What if I don't get picked in the team? Can anyone tell me how Jane and Dane are related? No one? That's cool. What they both lack is a fundamental skill of staying in the moment in a detached way. And now let's break this down. So, in order to access the memory that you've accessed, I want you to all focus on something that's happened in your past that you're not particularly comfortable with. I'm going to make you all a little bit uncomfortable right now. Not in a bad way. Maybe think of something that you would ruminate on at night. And now I want you to really feel it. In order to access this, you had to go into your memory, which means you had to leave the present moment in order to do so. A very similar process is happening for anxiety. So now think of something that's going to make you very anxious. Maybe it's asking out a girl that you've had a crush on since 9th grade. Or maybe it's giving a TED talk and worrying about all the cameras that are pointing at you right now. Maybe these things are something that will make you anxious. So I want you to close your eyes and think of that thing. A very similar process has just happened. In order to access that thought, you had to leave the present moment in order to think of it, which then you go, oh no, I'm anxious, I'm having this thought. So detachment comes in your evaluation of a physical sensation. So think of that anxious thing, and I can feel exactly what you're feeling. Maybe an increased heart rate, maybe some sweat that's perspiring from your hands in a little bit more. And this is okay, this is very normal. But what happens is your brain automatically evaluates this as something negative. It automatically evaluates that you're in a state of anxiety. What mindfulness and detachment teaches you to do is to completely detach from this interpretation and just objectively describe the physical sensation that you're feeling. So instead of my heart rate's increased, oh no, I have anxiety, it's just my heart rate has increased. You do not go to that extra level of interpretation. And this is a skill that you guys can achieve. So, how do we stay in the moment? How do we learn this skill of mindfulness? There are two really important things that I'm going to talk about today, and one is from a more theoretical standpoint, and this is the concept of impermanence. And now impermanence in the domain of clinical psychology, it's probably a little bit underappreciated at the moment. But what this is it assumes that the only thing that is constant is change itself. The world is constantly changing, and because we are a part of this world, we are subject to the same change from moment to moment. Now, I want to revisit our friends, Jane and Dane, and I want you to think of that anxiety-provoking stimulus that you were thinking of before. Really feel the burn in your chest. Really feel the increased heart rate, the sweat that's coming off the palm of your hands. Once you've located this, what I want you to do is focus on how these sensations change from moment to moment. And they will, if you actually pay attention to it. Maybe they change in their temperature. Maybe you are getting slightly cooler. The burn is slightly cooler. Maybe the heart rate is decreasing, or maybe it's increasing. Remember, there is no right or wrong, there's no good or bad. It's just objectively what's happening. So now that you've felt this, I think you can all agree that firstly, staying present in the moment is incompatible with these feelings of anxiety and rumination, as these feelings only occur as a product of the physical sensations that you feel. Who could notice changes when they're feeling these things? How they change from moment to moment. Maybe they're only slight, but they are definitely there. Okay, so now that we've understand that everything is impermanent, that things do change from moment to moment, what's next in learning this skill? And that is practice. Practice makes perfect. And like anything, mindfulness is difficult to begin with, but once you practice this skill and apply it in your day-to-day lives, it becomes much, much easier. So, meditation is probably the best tool for practicing mindfulness. The last 40 years of research confirms this and how good it can be in reducing psychological suffering. But it can be really hard to meditate, and not everyone can meditate. So what I've done is I'm going to draw your attention to 3 ways in which you can practice mindfulness in your day-to-day lives without meditating. So the first one is mindfully walking. So when I was working as a personal trainer in the gym just down here at Fit and Fast, it would absolutely kill me to see the amount of people that would just get on a treadmill and walk for an hour. Who's ever done that? Who's been to the gym and just walked on a treadmill and that's it? It would absolutely kill me, and I'll tell you why. Go outside, enjoy the fresh air. And it's amazing what you might find when you actually pay attention to it. When you're walking, focus on the physical sensations of your feet hitting the ground. Focus on the vibrations that come up from the ground as a product of your feet hitting the ground and then moving up into your legs. Feel your muscles that are contracting and then others are loosening in the cycle of walking. When you're in your environment, list 5 things that you can see, but remember, detach from that interpretation of being good or bad. So if you see a car that's driving past, it's not amazing or it's not a fast car, it is just a car that is driving past. Detach from that interpretation. The second one is mindfully eating. And now, you might think I'm a little bit strange to a degree when I say this, but when I was feeling really, really depressed, my motivation for eating definitely declined. And it's like, how? Because how good's food? Like, everyone loves food. But one thing that I found was mindfully eating definitely increased my motivation to eat. Just like walking, focus on the physical sensations of the food in your mouth and the different sensations they make. Maybe they're making a different flavor as the two foods come in and interact with one another. The problem with food and eating is that we do it so automatically. When was the last time you actually just ate a meal and you ate it without your phone? Anyone? When was the last time? Never? Like, you can't remember the last time? This is very, very normal. And because eating is so automatic, again, our mind is coming up with the way in which we can keep it interesting. But that means we lose focus of the present moment, and therefore our motivation tends to decrease as well. Our third one is anything to do with procedure. So this could be anything like making dinner, making a cup of tea, anything that has anything to do with procedure. For today's example, I'll use the cup of tea because, it's a pretty easy one to grasp. When you're boiling the kettle, focus on the sensations of the kettle. Is it moving as it begins to boil? Is the steam beginning to float at the top? Is it becoming thicker? When you pour the boiling water into your mug, does a bit of steam come up and blow in your face gently? Focusing on these things will allow you to stay present. And these are skills that you can apply in your everyday lives. I had 3 goals when I was kind of writing this talk. One was to draw your attention to things that you may not give much attention to, like your thought processes and everything like that, and maybe a little bit your psychological suffering that you may be going through. The second one was to give you a basic, foundational, theoretical understanding of impermanence and how things change from moment to moment. And the third was to give you some strategies that you could apply to your day-to-day lives and use this to be mindful. I really hope that I've given you all these things today. Thank you for having me, and good luck in the future.